What's up, YouTube? This is your friendly neighborhood movie nerd, back to give you guys everything that is going on in the world of movies and TV. And as you can see, I took a little bit of a break from the new current studio that I have to do a little bit of a throwback to the old movie nerd set that, or as I like to call it now, the discount set. And I decided to do a brief little return here because there is something today of a momentous occasion to celebrate. The 10-year anniversary of a film that arguably has done more for the world of film this decade than I would argue any other film. This is a film that arguably changed the landscape of superhero films, pop culture, how directors are viewed in Hollywood, how seriously certain films are taken in terms of their merit, how performances are made, just everything you could think of in the landscape of film, this film affected on this day 10 years ago when it was released. And that is, of course, Christopher Nolan's The Dark Knight. Let's take a journey back through time, back to the early 2000s/late 90s. This is where the superhero genre had come off suffering a lot of fatal blows from such gems like Batman and Robin, Spawn, Steel, and just a whole host of other movies. You had a little bit of an anomaly in 98 with Blade, but for the most part, the superhero genre, that was not a genre that seemed to be working. Then along came Bryan Singer and Sam Raimi, two people who had vastly different ideas for how superhero films would be made. And they showed that in their breakout feature films, the first X-Men and the first Spider-Man movie, released respectively in 2000 and 2002. Now, while these films are certainly monumental in terms of what they accomplished for the world of superhero films, in terms of their actual quality and how they hold up to today, I think that most can agree that they're not some of the best that the genre has to offer. But in terms of what they accomplished, they most definitely showed that the superhero genre was by no means dead and had a lot more to offer than the goofy, campy, crappy shit that we'd had to deal with in the previous years. So a couple years go by and there are a lot of other superhero installments that are released. You get the two sequels to those two films that I just stated. You get X2 and Spider-Man 2, which are largely regarded to be both better than the originals and some of the best superhero films ever made. But unfortunately, you also had a string of sucky movies like Ang Lee's 2003 Hulk installment, Mark Steven Johnson's Daredevil, Elektra, and Ghost Rider, Tim Story's two Fantastic Four movies, and a host of others that a lot of people would like to forget about. Then in 2005, Christopher Nolan releases his film Batman Begins, which compared to Batman and Robin, obviously was anything compared to Batman and Robin was going to be great. But the fact that the film was able to do what it did in terms of really taking the genre seriously and doing different things that really hadn't been done before. It was the first film that didn't feel like a straight-up super film, in that it didn't have some of the camp factors that you would find in, say, the Raimi Spider-Man movies, but it also didn't seem like it had a straight-up message that it was going for like Bryan Singer's. Instead, it focused and honed in on this character and arguably did something that no other superhero origin film had done before, and really focused on what made Bruce Wayne tick. And I still argue to this day that Batman Begins did that better than any other Batman origin story, including the 1989 Tim Burton film. Simply for the fact that, considering Batman's actual screen time, that movie feels more like a Joker origin movie than a Batman origin movie. And then 2008 comes along, and like I said, this was the year that everybody was waiting the sequel for Batman Begins, because Nolan announced that he was indeed going to do a trilogy and that his next installment would be The Dark Knight, and he would indeed be focusing on the Joker, the clown prince of crime, who to this point had not been seen on the big screen in live action since Jack Nicholson's iconic portrayal back in 1989. Now, besides the fact that 2008 is also a momentous occasion for helping to kick off the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as not one but two installments were released, both Iron Man in May and then the Incredible Hulk later on in August. Now, a lot of people love Batman Begins, but like most people, considering the internet wasn't back in 2008 what it is today, we know that there was its fair share of skeptics, particularly around the casting of the actor who they chose to play the Joker. We get to this day, 10 years ago, The Dark Knight hits theaters, and it is an absolute phenomenon.
Cops and lawyers wouldn't dare cross any of you. I mean, what happened?
So what are you proposing?
It's simple. kill the Batman.
The minute that this thing hits theaters, it is praised all around the board. It is hailed as a landmark for superhero films. It is hailed as a landmark of acting, directing, cinematography, and the film became so iconic that even still to this day, Christopher Nolan will never be able to make another film without his name being associated with The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight trilogy in total, but let's be honest, it really is because of The Dark Knight. Now, I've also heard another argument on the interwebs where The Dark Knight doesn't work as a film without Heath Ledger, and I can't entirely say that that argument is completely unjustified, simply for the fact that, yeah, if you look at The Dark Knight as a film, I mean, yeah, you could talk about every single other brilliant thing that goes into that film all the livelong day, the writing, the acting, the directing, but without Ledger as the Joker, without that performance, The Dark Knight is not what it is.
Here's my card.
Bruce, this is Harvey Dent.
Rachel's told me everything about you.
I certainly hope not.
Now, does that mean that it's not a great film? Obviously not. I wouldn't be making this friggin' video if it wasn't an amazing film. It's still my number 3 favorite film of all time. But that being said, without Ledger, you do not have this iconic trilogy, which is so ironic considering the fact that when he was originally cast, all people were doing was complaining. It wasn't to the level of complaints that people were saying, like to say a Michael Keaton once he was cast as Batman, or a Hugh Jackman once he was cast as Wolverine. But once Heath Ledger was cast as the Joker, people were immediately saying, oh, that guy, the guy who sang in the bleachers from 10 Things I Hate About You, he's gonna be the Joker? But needless to say, with one line within arguably one of the greatest opening sequences ever put to film,
I believe whatever doesn't kill you simply makes you
Stranger.
he cemented himself as the greatest comic book performance of all time, on the big screen at least. The film went on to gross just over $1 billion on a budget of $185 million. It still holds a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. At the 2009 Academy Awards, it was nominated for a whopping 8 Academy Awards: Best Supporting Actor for Heath Ledger, posthumous, which everybody knows that he won, Best Art Direction, Best Cinematography for Wally Pfister, Best Film Editing, Best Makeup, Best Sound Editing, Best Sound Mixing, and Best Visual Effects. It was also the film that single-handedly changed the Academy's way of picking and the amount of films that they picked for the Best Picture category, as The Dark Knight not being included in the Best Picture lineup that year caused them to push the number of films they allowed in from 5 to 10. It has been hailed as a masterpiece in filmmaking, not just for superhero films, but in crime films, dark drama films. It is hailed as a modern-day noir. It was ranked as the 15th greatest film in history for Empire Magazine's 2008 film list, and the late, great Roger Ebert himself wrote for the Chicago Sun-Times, awarding it 4 out of 4 stars, described it as a haunted film that leaps beyond its origins and becomes an engrossing tragedy. Now, I love Christian Bale as Batman. Like I said, he is my absolute favorite performance as the character. He's not my favorite superhero casting of all time, but he is definitely up there. And the reason why I ultimately went with him as my favorite Batman is simply for this film. I watched a video from Lessons from the Screenplay on this film in which they analyzed that The Dark Knight was the key to crafting the ultimate antagonist. And in it, it was published that the key to crafting the ultimate antagonist is to have him challenge the hero's set of beliefs and knowledge and ultimately destroy everything that he thinks that he knew previously.
This city deserves a better class of criminal. I'm gonna give it to him.
Now, well, this idea has been borrowed and used for other superhero films that came later on down the line. 2 pressing examples that I can think of are, of course, Marvel examples, namely Captain America, the Winter Soldier, and Black Panther. None of them were able to do it as well as this one, still, in my opinion. Because the brilliant thing that this film does, that most sequels are supposed to do, is basically take the world that was set up so well by the first one and completely demolish it. Because the interesting thing is that this version of Batman is used to a corrupt city. The entire first film, it established that Gotham was corrupt to the point beyond saving. So the fact that you take this character, this version of Batman, and you put him up against a foe that is somehow able to make him even more worried about the city that he cares so much about, in terms of just throwing it into pure anarchy and chaos.
Like me. They need you right now. But when they don't, they'll cast you out. Like a leper. You see, their morals, their code, it's a bad joke. Dropped at the first sign of trouble. They're only as good as the world allows them to be. I'll show you. When the chips are down, these civilized people, they'll eat each other.
Now, of course, I'm droning on and on about Bale and Ledger, but obviously they're not the only two actors in the film, nor are they the only two great performances in this film. You've got Michael Caine, Gary Oldman, and Morgan Freeman all reprising their roles from the first one as Alfred Pennyworth, newly promoted Commissioner Jim Gordon, and Lucius Fox. You've also got two new incoming players this time around. You've got Maggie Gyllenhaal, who came in to replace Katie Holmes as Rachel Dawes, as well as newcomer Aaron Eckhart, who portrayed District Attorney Harvey Dent, who would later become Two-Face at the end of the film.
It's not about what I want. It's about what's fair! You thought we could be decent men in an indecent time!
Now, another criticism that went towards this film is the fact that the Two-Face twist felt too rushed, and it didn't feel very natural, and I could not disagree more with that statement. Because it's simple, while the Joker is an enigmatic villain and a force to be reckoned with, that ultimately is all that he is, a force.
You'll see. I'll show you.
And as entertaining as he is to watch, if you don't actually give him an arc or some form of outlet in order to help complete the film's thematic quest that you put the hero on, the film ultimately doesn't work out in the end. So by choosing to have your third act twist be Harvey, who is supposed to be this sign of the ultimate sign of good, who is going to be sort of almost like a symbolic heir to Batman and what he's been able to do for the film, for the Joker to take that and to ultimately twist it and meddle with it and ultimately turn it into yet another corrupt force of evil as Harvey becomes later on with Two-Face, it ultimately helps complete both this film's journey and Batman's journey.
Your boy's gonna be alright, Gordon. Lie. Like I lied.
Because at the moment that Batman knocks Two-Face off the ledge and sees him die, he finally realizes that there is no way to truly save Gotham the right way, per se. Because in his line that he uses to close out the film,
Whatever Gotham needs me to be.
it's not only like a precursor to what is to come and kind of just like an overall summation of the film, but it also kind of helps him realize internally that there was never any way to save Gotham, because when he chooses to lie and chooses to take the fall for all of Dent's murders, it's almost like him finally giving into the corruption that he's fought against for so long. Hell, even Luke Cage did that at the end of its most recent season. That's how influential this film has become.
You'll see. I'll show you.
So I guess in summation of all my points, I love The Dark Knight, I love Batman, and this entire trilogy is, once again, I've said it before, I will say it again, a reaffirmation of the reasons for why Batman is my favorite superhero. And I'm officially happy to say that after 10 years, The Dark Knight has officially become a film classic. And if I had to go back to my old rating system, which I know I haven't used in a while, I would give this film easily 5 out of 5 stars. So that was my commentary, I guess you would call it, on The Dark Knight after 10 years. I still can't believe it's been 10 years since 2008. Let me know what you guys thought of this in the comments below. Make sure to click the like button and the subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter at Movie Nerd Review. Also head on over to one of my two websites that I have now, movienerdreviews.com and letterboxd.com/Dom81797. Also, if you choose to, you can follow me on Instagram at my name, Dominic Rizzi. I am the Movie Nerd. I will see you guys next time.